Hello again, it's another Tuesday, another Met Office deep dive. I'm Alex Burkill, presenter and meteorologist here at the Met Office. Now I want to crack on with the weather. Sometimes I get some comments saying that I dilly-dally and take too long to get into the weather nitty-gritty, so I'm going to dive straight in on the deal that you make sure to hit a like on this video and share it with anyone that you think might be interested in it. So currently the weather has changed. We said last week that it was going to, and it did over the bank holiday weekend. We saw the more unsettled weather coming its way in, making its way known across the country, and well, that's the story that we have at the moment. Currently the jet stream is pushing its way across the UK. It's not an especially strong jet, you wouldn't expect that at this time of year, but nonetheless it's running across us and it's driving various features. We currently have a feature across us and it's bringing a fair amount of rain, particularly across the southern two-thirds of the country. At the moment, as we go through the rest of Tuesday, a bit more showery further north, and because of the proximity of low pressure to the north of us, we also have some blustery winds. But what's going to happen as we go further on? Well, let's run this through. So this system then clears away towards the east, so through the end of the day a lot of the rain clears away as well, but the jet stream doesn't go anywhere particularly far. It's still lingering across the UK, still the low to the north of us, so still some breezy conditions across northern parts in particular. Wednesday definitely does look quieter for many, but not totally dry. There'll be quite a few showers around. These will be easing from the west as that bit of ridge of high pressure builds in later on. But then another system comes through, and if I just pause it here and if I put our rainfall totals on, or rainfall rates on, and you can see on Thursday it's looking pretty wet across northern parts in particular. But how wet are we looking? Well, let's have a look, shall we? Here are our 24-hour rainfall totals, and if we just start ahead, if we run through Thursday, sorry, I've gone too far. And so some of these figures are, so across western parts of Scotland, we're looking at potentially 30, 40 millimetres of rain perhaps. Even across some parts of, well, Cumbria, we could be looking at in excess of 20 to 30 millimetres. But worth always bearing in mind across many parts of, well, southern southeastern England, it's looking largely dry yet again. Yes, there's some wet weather around at the moment, but I'll come on to that in a second because it's important. Lots of places actually avoiding most of the rain. But if we run through then, if we continue our story, so we have a weather system coming through as we go through Thursday, and then if I press play again, that then clears through, and again another showery picture as we go through into Friday. So the theme really for this week and for a little while to come is a weather system comes through, then something a bit quieter, albeit with a chance of some showers, and then another weather system comes through, and that's the theme that we have as we go through the next few days. So yeah, I'm trying to ridge in as we go through Friday, but it doesn't last particularly long. Then the jet stream is driving another area of low pressure as we go towards the weekend. Now, the weekend's a bit of a tricky one. There's been some changes in the forecast. I'll tell you for why. This area of low pressure, I'm just going to pause it here. That's coming in as we go through this weekend. The position of this low has changed. Some models want it a bit further south, more under the core of the jet. And so then how it develops, how quickly it pushes through. Now that has changed in the forecast as we've got nearer the time. At the moment, it looks like it will track just to the, well, to north of Northern Ireland, coming across parts of northern Scotland. And doing so, it's going to bring some unsettled weather, but it now looks like it's going to come through ever so slightly quicker than it did this time yesterday. Why is that important, I hear you ask? Well, let's look at our air mass, and if we get rid of the jet stream for a time being, I'm just going to run it back a little bit, because there's some warm, humid air over parts of France, also Spain, but also France at the moment. And this warm and humid air, the plume of it, is likely to push its way up into southern parts as we go through this weekend. But because now this weather system looks like it's going to come through just that little bit quicker, that plume's not going to push us far north. It's not going to have as much time across the country to really set in and do what it can do. What can we get with these plumes of warm, humid air? There's the risk of some thunderstorms. So let's look at that. Here is a tephigram. Remember, if you've not seen a tephigram before, it's kind of a profile up through the atmosphere. So here's our temperature and our humidity of sorts nearer the surface, and then it's a profile of what we're seeing as we go higher and higher up through the atmosphere. Now, what this chart is showing, I could go into tephigrams for hours. We have done it in previous deep dives, but the main thing that I want you to take away from this is that only a little bit of heating at the surface, we're talking rising the temperatures to around 22, 23 Celsius, could cause some severe convection. Now this is a tephigram from for 12Z or 12 o'clock on this coming Saturday, and it's for around the Oxford area, but it's from the model run from 12Z on Monday. And this red area is our cape, and you can see it's quite a big cape, and what that means is just a little bit of warming near the surface. We're talking low to mid 20s, not out of the question by any means for this weekend. Just a little bit of warming means this then parcel of air could rise quite rapidly up through the air, and that's when we get our severe convection. And so this chart suggests, or suggested, that we could have some intense thundery downpours. We're talking heavy rain, frequent lightning, even some large hail and other things mixed in as well. So if this was coming off, then we'd be talking about the risk of some issues, some hazards as a result of some heavy thundery showers. But that's now not the most likely scenario. This is the same chart, same place, same time that it's valid for, but this time taken from the 0Z model run from this morning. And you can see this shaded pink area, the cape, the convective available potential energy, it's much smaller. We have a much lower cape value. And so whilst you can get some rise to the parcel of air, it does look like it's going to lift up. The area, it's just not as big, so there's not as much energy there. So when you look at this, yes, there's the potential for some showers to develop as we go through Saturday towards the southeast, but they don't look like they'll be as intense as the showers that we could have seen had the system that's coming into the northwest on Saturday been delayed a little bit, like it looked like it would have been in the model runs from Monday. So if we just look at things in a little bit more detail, and quickly let's just start through Thursday. Oh, actually, let's do Wednesday first of all, just to cover it. So scattered showers for many places, becoming a bit more widespread as we go through the day, then easing from the west later on. But darting ahead to Thursday, and we have a fairly wet picture across northern parts of the UK, a fair bit drier towards the south-southeast. On Friday, a few bursts of showery rain here and there, and then, yeah, let's go through Saturday. And so you can see a rash of showers across some southeastern parts, and some heavier ones. We can't rule out some thunder, but it doesn't look like it's going to be as impactful as the setup looked like it would be this time yesterday. Worth bearing in mind that across the near continent there are some heavy thundery downpours likely to develop here, but I'm not really expecting them, or that plume of air, to be as dominant across parts of the southeast, and so there was the risk of these showers developing, but I don't think they're going to be as severe as they could have been. All the time, it now looks like we're going to see some more wet and windy weather pushing into parts of the northwest in particular, so across Northern Ireland, Scotland, some high rainfall totals pushing through, 25, 30 millimetres perhaps, but towards the southeast it looks largely dry. But how dry? Well, let's look at our rainfall totals for the whole week. And so these are our rolling rainfall accumulations, and if I just run through the next few days, you can see with Thursday some high rainfall totals building up across parts of western Scotland, and then if we continue adding more rain in as we go through this coming weekend, then it's even higher rainfall totals. That being said, it's not especially high. You know, for a whole unsettled, changeable week to be looking at totals staying below 100 millimetres across western parts of Scotland. I mean, it's wet for sure, but it's not as exceptionally wet as other weeks during the winter, the autumn, for example, and it doesn't even necessarily counter just how exceptionally dry it's been through much of this spring. And also, like I highlighted earlier, across parts of the southeast, not seeing much rain. This is in the 0.1 to 10 millimetre bracket. That's not a lot of rain to come in 4 or 5 days or so. And so really there, the largely dry weather, albeit, yes, I know today it's raining for many places, the largely dry theme somewhat continues. whilst we're on the topic of rain, I did just want to show you this chart, because if you caught my deep dive last week, you'll have heard me, or you'll have seen me show a chart like this. But this is showing our radar coverage across the country currently, and you'll notice the difference. Last week, Castor Bay over Northern Ireland, that radar was out of action, but fortunately our engineers here worked incredibly quickly. I think it was either by the end of Tuesday or definitely by Wednesday, Thursday time, it was up and running again. And so now we have a more wide range network when it comes to, or more coverage when it comes to our radar information. Now, in an ideal world, we'd have even more radars covering every inch of the UK in more detail, but that's just not possible for a number of reasons, geography, for example. So big decisions are made when it comes to the position of these radars. But yeah, progress is being made, and yeah, ideally we would have more, but unfortunately, this is the amount that we have for the time being. So I think I've rattled through the weather that we can expect this week. Changeable at times. Yes, there will be some drier weather. Obviously, it's half term for some people. So not a total washout, but it's definitely more changeable than it's been recently. And that was the forecast that we were going for. But let's have a little look at what's to come as we look further ahead. And the first thing that I wanted to highlight is our forecast confidence index. And the dashed line just above the red shaded area is our average forecast confidence index for this stage in the forecast. So as you can see, as we get further ahead in time, looking further ahead, as you would expect, the forecast confidence decreases. The solid black line below the red shaded area and above the green shaded area shows where our current forecast is compared to that average, and with the reds, as you might expect, indicating that actually at the moment forecast confidence is slightly below average for this stage. As we go further ahead and the forecast generally plateaus, it's around average, that's negligible. But yeah, forecast confidence is slightly below average at the moment. So some uncertainty, some little tricky details that we still need to firm up on. But the general trend as we go through into meteorological summer is for the weather to settle down again. But it's going to take a little while to do that. If we look at our probabilistic pressure trend for the next, well, over a month, really, and remember, blues indicate low pressure, so more changeable weather, reds indicate high pressure, more settled, and greens indicating a sort of neutral, unbiased setup. Previous model runs at the bottom, and you can see last Thursday, Friday model runs even up until the weekend, really hinting that as we go through this coming weekend, we should see high pressure being more dominant and a more settled theme for many, albeit with this high pressure it would have allowed for that plume of warmer thundery air to come up from the near continent. And that story's changed a little bit. It now looks a bit more neutral, a bit uncertain, because there's high pressure and not too far away. There are ridges coming through that I showed you, but then there's also various low pressure systems. So that's why it's a bit tricky around this area, and that's why there's that reduced confidence in the forecast. Then an increased chance of us returning back to more changeable weather as we go through, well, this time next week and much of next week, really. But then relatively strong signs that as we go through towards the following weekend, 7th, 8th of June, that kind of time, we're likely to see a return to the more settled weather. But if you caught my Weather Studio live last week with the other Alex, you'll have seen I showed that chart, and I also showed this zonal trend chart. And I think I showed it in my 14-day outlook that went out on our app on Friday as well. Because it's, well, it's in full agreement that we are going to continue with this westerly mobile zonal pattern. So our zonal trend is showing whether our air is coming from the west or the east, and the blues indicate with quite high confidence that we're going to continue with a westerly flow as we go through into June, through March of June and into the beginning of July. So what that means is we have our weather set up, and I'm hinting that, yeah, we could have high pressure nearby the UK, but it's going to be quite mobile, quite changeable. And so although there will be high pressure often in control, it's not going to be the same big blocking high that we had through much of spring. There's going to be some relatively changeable weather coming through, mostly towards the northwest of the UK, most likely to be drier towards the southeast. So what do I want to show? Oh, I know. Let's ping this up. And what do I want to show? Oh, I think I've gone to the wrong place. Bear with me. Here we go. So let's start through, let's go a week ahead, and these are showing our most likely regimes. So for next week, the left-hand side, we have our most likely setup, and then our second and our third most likely scenarios. So in the most likely, this is for this time, next Wednesday, the 4th of June, and it's showing low pressure over somewhere towards the north of the UK, which goes in line with that more unsettled, changeable spell that I highlighted on that probabilistic pressure trend in around a week's time. So yeah, an unsettled theme through much of next week. But if we keep running it through, and as we go towards, well, where are we now? Sunday? Yeah, Sunday the 8th of July. So 7th, 8th of July, that's when there are signs of a bit of a change. And this suggests that we could start to see high pressure coming in, maybe an Azores high building from the south-southwest. And with that then, I mean, the second most likely scenario also has high pressure somewhere towards the south. The third most likely scenario less clear, but nonetheless an increasing chance of high pressure coming its way in. And that looks likely to stick around if I'm just running through these days, and they're generally under the influence. We've got a whole now week further ahead, and still high pressure the main talking point. I mean, I know when you look at these percentages, they don't look particularly high, but if you add them all up, all of the percentage chances of those high pressure being the most dominant story, then it tells a more likely, or it gives a more likely setup. And so, yeah, the detail exactly where the high pressure is going to be, that's not there. I think it's most likely towards the south. And with that and that mobile pattern that I talked about, even if we have high pressure somewhere towards the south of the UK with a mobile pattern, we would still get some wetter weather toppling in at times, and like I say, towards the northwest. So one to watch. But tentative signs that at least as we go into the beginning of summer, that we could have some more dry weather, not as prolonged dry spell as we had during much of spring, but nonetheless some decent summery weather. Whether or not that's good news for you or not, depending on how much you're in need of some rain, let me know in the comments. Right, I've talked an awful lot about the weather coming up, which I may be treading on Alex's toes, who's doing the 10-day trend tomorrow, but I'm sure he'll find more to talk about, so worth checking that out. Then a couple of other things that I wanted to mention before I head off. And you may have heard last week talk about a marine heat wave with temperatures, our sea surface temperatures around the UK, around 3 to 4 degrees higher than average for the time of year at the moment. There were almost around 12, 13 degrees, which is well above the threshold for it to be classed as a marine heat wave, and we're seeing these marine heat waves becoming more and more common with our changing climate. Exactly what the impacts of these marine heat waves are, well, it's still to be determined as such, but pretty likely that they're going to have an impact, and likely be a negative impact on various marine wildlife. So it's not necessarily good news. In fact, it's not really good news, but you know, if you're hoping for, if you're planning to go for a swim in the sea, then it might be welcome news for some people. But the thing that I wanted to highlight is with this change to a more mobile westerly setup that we've seen over the bank holiday weekend and we'll continue to have at the moment, we are going to be dragging in some cooler seas or cooler water from the west, and so that's going to be coming towards us. So although this is our current anomaly map from, well, yesterday, and you can see temperatures well above average across much of the seas around the UK, we do have cooler water coming our way, and so we're going to see that anomaly dropping a little bit as we go through this week and into next week as well. What happens thereafter with likely to be more fine weather as we go through June and through the rest of the summer? Well, temperatures probably going to rise again, but for the time being, I think we're going to see a slight drop in our temperatures, and so they're going to be closer to average. Speaking of averages and records for this season, you'll no doubt be aware that it's been exceptionally sunny, it's been exceptionally dry, we've had some very warm weather, but I wanted to look at sunshine stats quite quickly. This map is showing our spring 2025 figures compared to the average for the whole of spring. Now this is up until data from Monday, so the 26th of May, so it's only around 95% of the way through the season, so not quite fully, we're pretty much there. But this is comparing spring so far with the average for the whole season, and pretty much everywhere well above average sunshine amounts. Scotland, Northern Ireland have already had their sunniest springs on record. UK, Wales and England not far off, definitely one to watch out for as we go through the rest of the season, but it has been exceptionally sunnier than average, and you can see that with this map here. Some places seeing, well over the 135% of the seasonal average. Then one last thing that I wanted to show you before I dart ahead is the forecast for this coming weekend in Rochester, or this Friday, because my wonderful friend Chris Bucock and his fiancée Clare are getting married, and I will be heading there this Friday to be best man. And the welcome news, I think, from their point of view, is whilst I can't guarantee it, because there will be some clouds, some showery rain, and the position of this, it could edge a little bit further southwards. I think across a large part of Kent, it's actually looking pretty decent. A lot of fine, rather sunny weather, pretty bright, probably not wall-to-wall sunshine, but from a photo point of view, that's probably good news. And it'll be quite warm, low 20s, that kind of thing, so not too hot. Obviously, I will be wearing a suit. But at the moment, tentatively, I'm optimistic that the weather's looking largely fine. Yes, it could be cloudy, but it's going to start off with, but it should brighten up, a decent amount of sunshine. Can't guarantee it will stay totally dry, but at the moment, things are looking pretty promising. So that's something that I'll be looking forward to at the end of the week. If you have anything planned this week, or this weekend in particular, do let us know, because we will be doing another Weather Studio Live on Friday. This week it's with Alex Deacon and Honor, so they'll be taking your questions, and I think Honor will be Alex will be hosting another quiz for Honor to answer this time. So make sure you check that out, 12:15 on our YouTube channel every Friday. Like I said, Alex Deacon will be here on Wednesday with the latest 10-day trend. We'll be updating you, of course, with all of our other content through the week. Make sure to hit the like button if you've enjoyed this video, maybe even if you haven't, and share it with anyone who you think might be interested. Leave some comments, I'll try to answer some of those, and any questions that I don't answer, we can answer in the Weather Studio Live on Friday. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again soon.